Folks, I've been covering the very suspicious deaths and disappearances related to over 7 people now connected to UFOs, space technology, and advanced weapon systems. It's very creepy and scary that a lot of people that have had anything to do with these technologies, whether they're, people that have been involved in investigating alien UFO crashes in the US for the government, whether it's people involved in creating technology and new metals that are being used in rocket ships, parts that are apparently going to replace Russian parts. There's a lot of suspicious reasons why these UFO and space technology experts are going missing or dying. And today, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you about 2 more instances of people who have died very, very suspiciously after coming into contact with advanced technologies that have something to do with the UFOs. It is actually very, very dark. Before I get to the new murders and deaths and disappearances that I've uncovered related to this, I want to give you a little update on the main man, General McCasland, who went missing recently. He apparently walked out of his home, no shoes, no glasses, just a revolver, and he disappeared without a trace. Just so happens that he had been one of the premier generals that was working inside the government dealing with a lot of UFO instances. He apparently had privied access to what was going on with the Roswell crash, where they said that they apparently, allegedly recovered UFO crafts as well as biological material, i.e. aliens, and he mysteriously vanished, He basically just completely went missing, and now there is a new update related to him. People believe, unsurprisingly, that his disappearance may have some foul play involved, and what's really, really creepy about this is that it seems like, despite them saying that there might be foul play involved, there's really no serious new information about General McCasland's disappearance. And we're still pretty much in the dark, other than knowing that definitely something dodgy is going on. Look at this.
Really appreciate you making the time on this. And this is such a perplexing case. So many questions here. What is standing out to you the most about the general's disappearance?
Well, hi, Natasha. The thing that worries me most of all is the question, does the general not want to be found? I know some people are pointing towards possible suicide, but I was happy to see in that report that Alex clarified that there's no evidence the general was suicidal, and his wife has actually spoken very highly of his mental capacities. And friends of his who travelled with him, they tell me that a week earlier he'd actually cycled 60 miles. So this is not a man who was at the end of his life, somebody who was contemplating possible mental incapacity. He wasn't suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. There doesn't seem to be any motivation for suicide. I do think we have to ask now the possibility of foul play. Is there somebody who has interceded to take the general out of the picture? He was a man.
This is all they've got. He was reported missing on the 27th. Police issued a silver alert around a week later. They said on March the 6th, there's no evidence of foul play. Sounds like there's no evidence whatsoever. The day later, they discover a sweatshirt. That's it. That's all they've got on this guy.
Man with some of the most sensitive US military intelligence secrets in his head, especially particle beam technology. And as Alex acknowledged, he was involved in abortive attempts prior to the Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump election campaign in 2016 to negotiate with John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, about, believe it or not, UAP transparency. There was a discussion underway in which General McCasland was involved. It's a matter of public record now that his emails were part of emails being circulated where it was being discussed that Hillary Clinton, as president, would be making a disclosure about UAPs. And as we know, the disappearance of General McCasland closely follows the announcement by President Trump that he will, and he has pledged to do this, be making a disclosure about UAPs, extraterrestrials.
Yeah, absolutely. We know McCasland worked for several government programs, including the Global Positioning System, or GPS, the Space-Based Laser Project Office, the Air Force Research Laboratory, just to name a few. Do you think any of his positions made him a potential target? And also, we saw in that report, the Russians once hacked his email. I mean, what do you make of his wife saying no one would be interested in 13-year-old secrets? Do you agree?
Well, certainly his wife made the point that there's been no change in his security clearance since 2013. But what that obscures is that since he left the service of the US Air Force, he's been working with a private military contractor that has been directly involved in particle beam technology research. It's very...
man. So since he's left the government, he's been working with a private military contractor on particle technology.
very common for people like the general, very senior military officers with extensive knowledge from their military service, to go into private service. And he's been very heavily involved in secret programs that are part of special access programs with the US and intelligence departments, which frankly are still ongoing. So the idea that somehow his knowledge is dated or obsolescent doesn't hold. He is an extremely important military figure with incredibly important secrets inside his head, and his disappearance, I know for a fact, is an issue of grave concern to people at the highest levels of the Pentagon.
Okay.
So he's got a lot of secrets in his head. This is a great deal of concern to people at the highest level of the Pentagon, but they got no information. Okay, this is getting very, very, very suspicious. Now, I want to take you now to talk to you about two other suspicious deaths, and they occurred in the same place. The place is Huntsville, Alabama. Okay, it's the alleged epicenter for classified government space initiatives and long-rumored extraterrestrial research. So here's a little bit of background about where a lot of these
where did all of those Nazi scientists go as part of Operation Paperclip when they were brought to the United States after World War II? Well, they were brought to the massive underground facility in Huntsville, Alabama, the Redstone Army Arsenal that was eventually called the Marshall Space Flight Center. So it's no coincidence that President Trump yesterday announced that Space Force would be moving 30,000 employees to Huntsville, Alabama.
We had a lot of competition for this, and Alabama's getting it, Huntsville in particular, so congratulations, everybody. Katie, congratulations.
Well, it makes sense, as this is home to the secret space program, reportedly one of the largest underground cities in America, in Huntsville, Alabama. Sources in the U.S. Air Force that I've spoken with directly have confirmed to me that these facilities exist, that they have been used since the 1950s for a secret spaceport. Two newspapers in the 1950s also confirmed that they were building this massive underground rocket facility. You can take a look at this. This was the dumb facility put in the side of the wall here. And this is what it looks like, you can see. And this goes back to the 1950s, underground site plan and requirements. Other eyewitnesses who worked in the secret space program say Huntsville, Alabama is home to a large spaceport used by Nordic extraterrestrials. Yes, ETs. And the Earth Alliance. I know this might be blowing some of your minds who are uninitiated or who are not familiar with this subject matter. This is BS. No, it's not. Alien craft, anti-gravity technologies, all being developed here in Huntsville, Alabama. Richard Escridge was a NASA plasma fusion propulsion engineer who worked at this facility, co-founded Helion, by the way. His daughter, Amy Escridge, finally blew the whistle on what she knew. And shortly after this interview, she died of suicide. She says disclosure around the UFO story will come out of Huntsville, Alabama. Listen.
Disclosure is going to come out of Huntsville, Alabama, out of Redstone Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama is the biggest fucking deal that you've never heard of. It's the biggest fucking deal that you have never heard of. Because the fact is that we have deep and wide, extensive credibility that no one knows about because you're not supposed to know about it. Because it's in Alabama, it's obscure. You're not supposed to know about it. That's the point.
People that don't know what Huntsville is. Amy
People know what Huntsville is? Is that what you're saying? People don't know what Huntsville is. Huntsville is the biggest fucking deal on the planet that you have never heard of. Now, like, Huntsville is the Silicon Valley of government national security technology and intelligence community technology and aerospace technology.
Listen to what you're hearing, right? She's saying that Huntsville is the biggest secret you've never heard about when it comes to space, alien, you know, this kind of very advanced technology, okay? She died, and I'm going to tell you all about how she suspiciously went out in a minute, but she's talking crazy in this interview, and anybody that's got anything to do with this stuff in Huntsville, it can go wrong for them.
Huntsville is like the hub. Like, we are number 3 on the first strike launch list.
So she's saying that they're number 3 on the first strike launch list. If it becomes nuclear war, this is the 3rd most important place that America's ops are going to send nuclear bombs to destroy, because there's so much important technology there.
If first strike happens, 3 targets, Huntsville will be one of them. Alabama. This is Alabama, dude, in the deep south. we're in the top 3 first strike. We're in the top 3 first strike because you haven't heard of us. That's why. It's on purpose.
You haven't heard of them, but America's enemies have.
I started the Institute for one reason. One reason, the Institute. I started it as a public-facing persona to disclose anti-gravity technology through, because I told Mark this. If you stick your neck out in public, at least someone notices if your head gets chopped off. If you stick your neck out in private, f*** you. They will bury you. They will burn down your house while you're sleeping in your bed, and it won't even make the news.
Some people in the chat are saying, how did she find out? Or her dad, who worked there. That's how. Journalists might.
So before I get into Dr. Amy Escridge, who you just saw, and her suspicious death, she wasn't the first. So I'm going to tell you about the first person who suspiciously passed away in the midst of this Huntsville, Alabama operation that was incredibly secret. So the person I'm going to tell you about here is named Dr. Ning Li, a renowned physicist who pioneered anti-gravity propulsion research and was working in Huntsville, Alabama. So this is a little bit of backstory on Dr. Ning Li.
Now, this story obviously begins with one particular physicist by the name of Dr. Ning Li, who was...
Now look at the title of this video. The scientist that discovered anti-gravity then disappeared completely.
Working at the Center for Space Plasma and Aeronomic Research and the University of Alabama, Huntsville in the 1990s. Ning Li's main claim to fame here seemed to come from a variety of her peer-reviewed papers that she published during this time, in which a theory of hers predicted a practical way to create an anti-gravity effect.
I think the theory already hold there, they published through the review process. Then that's very controversial. I know a lot of people criticize it. But fortunately, nobody found any mistake in my papers. So just about no mistake, but people don't believe it. I know until I got an experimental result, I can show people.
And before I try to explain any of her research, I want to make clear that when I'm referring to anti-gravity, I'm essentially referring to gravity manipulation, as gravity is a fundamental force of nature. And in regards to Ning Li's research, the core idea included in her papers seemed to stem from one core concept, that being things called superconductors, which are essentially a substance that can conduct electricity with no resistance, meaning that no energy is lost from point A to point B. Now, generally the state of superconductivity is achieved when a substance cools to a particular critical temperature, and generally one of the cooler side effects, no pun intended, for achieving this critical temperature is the expulsion of the substance's magnetic field, and that's what you're witnessing right now. Now, this is obviously one example from a broad, sweeping concept that could be applied to the future of superconductors. And as you can imagine, having incredibly efficient electricity would be highly useful for a number of reasons beyond just the gravitomagnetic effect. But on that same note, one of the main problems with superconductors is that you need incredibly cold temperatures to achieve this. This has led to an interest in high-temperature superconductors, which is actually referring to substances that superconduct above negative 196 Celsius. And realistically, for these things to probably change our day-to-day lives, such as the ever-so-elusive hoverboard, there's definitely going to be a need for a room temperature superconductor, which has yet to be discovered yet. And while I will note last year the first room temperature superconductor was found, the only problem with it is that it only existed under extreme levels of pressure, making it really unusable for the average person. But all of that being said, where Dr. Ning Li fits into this is her creation and claim that a high-temperature superconducting disk that she was developing could essentially create a force field-like effect.
So she created some kind of, high-conducting gravity disk, and she's basically working on anti-gravity technology, looking at these superconductors that can basically transport energy between objects with absolutely no loss of energy. And you know what it's like? I mean, look, I'm no scientist, but when energy changes forms, you lose energy, right? Like, you're going to burn fuel to run your car. There's energy lost. There's heat generated. There's a loss of energy. If you got your light bulb on, it gets hot. That's a loss of energy. It's not supposed to get hot. The heat that's generated is a byproduct. So she's working on this technology that can essentially have no loss of energy. And as she's described it here, taming gravity. Well, isn't that interesting? Okay. Huntsville, Alabama, working on this, very, very interesting and groundbreaking technology. Well, after receiving a major 2003 Department of Defense grant, Dr. Ning Li would just completely vanish from the public eye, stopped publishing all research, and then she would die in 2021.
And the last time anyone in the academic world got a good look at Ning Li or her research was a year after that, in 2003, when she attended a MITRE conference. Now, MITRE is an organization that manages federally funded research efforts, and Ning Li not only attended this conference, but she gave a presentation entitled The Measurability of AC Gravity Fields. And maybe even more interesting than that, she was joined on stage in this presentation by one of her colleagues, a U.S. Army officer from the Redstone Arsenal reportedly assigned to the U.S. Army's Aviation and Missile Command. Now that means pretty unequivocally that more than a year after the conclusion of that initial contract, Ning Li was still working with the DoD. But then Ning Li just fell off the academic radar. She stopped publishing papers, stopped making public appearances, and before long, people began to wonder if this promising physicist who seemed to have unlocked the secret to anti-gravity had gone missing, or maybe worse. We did get some tacit confirmation that Ning Li was still working with the Department of Defense in 2004 when a journalist investigating her disappearance named Tim Ventura didn't manage to hunt down Ning Li, but did manage to get in touch with one of her colleagues, another scientist named Eugene Podkletnov. Now, Podkletnov relayed that she was doing fine and was still working with the U.S. military, but could not offer any further details into the nature of their work. But after that, the trail pretty much went cold, and by 2008, 4 years later, people were beginning to fill in the blanks with their own conspiracy theories, starting with a scientist named Jack Sarfati, who took to social media to post that he knew for a fact that Ning Li had made significant strides in her anti-gravity efforts, but had since decided to leave the United States to return to continue her work for the Chinese government. Now, this idea that a Chinese citizen would come to the United States to work their way into a position helping to develop advanced military technologies for the US government, only to leave and take those technologies back to China with them, very quickly started making the rounds online because, well, it's pretty believable. And this idea got another boost in traction from the UAP UFO community because of the nature of her work. But I can say pretty conclusively that based on my research, this never happened. In fact, Ning Li lived in Huntsville, Alabama until the day she died in 2021.
So she goes missing 2003, 2004. She's got a Defense Department contract to fund her experimental technology. But that basically leads to her just disappearing. People are suspecting maybe she's gone to China, maybe she's passing secrets back to the Chinese government, maybe she's switched sides. But now they're saying, no, she lived in Huntsville, Alabama all the way up until she died. What was she doing there? Was she working? Was she working secretly? Was it top secret? Did she have to lay low? We don't know, but she would die in 2021.
In July of 2023, a journalist named Noah Logan, working for the Huntsville Business Journal, decided to see if he could get to the bottom of the disappearance of Ning Li after watching an excellent video about the topic published on the YouTube channel Barely Sociable. I highly recommend that video. I'll include a link to it in the description below. Now, Logan's research very quickly brought him to the same conclusion that mine did. An obituary for one Dr. Ning Li, published on July 27th of 2021, by the Berry Hill Funeral Home out of Huntsville, Alabama. And this is definitely the Dr. Ning Li that we're looking for. The obituary states very clearly that Ning Li was, quote, one of the world's leading scientists in superconductivity anti-gravity. But the obituary offered very little else in the way of details except for the name of Ning Li's son, George Men, who still lived in the Huntsville area. Logan soon managed to get a hold of George Men and put at least part of this mystery to bed. We now know that Dr. Ning Li continued her work with the U.S. Department of Defense for the remainder of her life. In fact, at one point, her son even asked her about the secrecy related to her work, and she gave him an excellent answer. I'll quote him directly here. First off, you don't know anything. Second off, if you even think you might know something, you forget about it. And he said, okay, that's fine. Her son also shed light on why Dr. Ning Li stopped publishing her work. According to him, once she started working with the Department of Defense and secured her top secret security clearance, she began working on classified programs and was no longer allowed to publish her findings, which Dr. Ning Li seemed to not like very much. She loved publishing her work.
So she worked for the Department of Defense all through those years when she was missing. She wasn't allowed to talk about anything, but that was chilling. The way she said that her son had told her, if you see something, you didn't see it and you forget about it. So no doubt she saw some shit, all right? And it's not truly fully understood exactly how or why she went out, but this is yet another person with a lot of secrets related to space technology that just disappeared into the ether. We don't know what they were working on. We don't know what knowledge they knew. We don't know how they went out. That is it. Okay. And that's why it's even more chilling that when we find out that Dr. Ning Li had all these secrets, damn near over 10 years worth of secret work, never telling anyone what she was working on for the government in Huntsville, Alabama. And then the year after she passed away, we would see the death of Dr. Amy Catherine Escridge, who we saw exposing what was going on in Huntsville, Alabama in that last video. And news would begin circulating in June 2022 throughout Huntsville that she had passed away. This is Amy Escridge. And it is a backstory on her in her obituary, Amy Escridge obituary. A brilliant mind left us when Amy Catherine Escridge went to her eternal rest in the Lord on Saturday, the 11th of June, 2022. At just age 34, Amy already had a beautiful vision for life and the cosmos. She had a genius for science and questioned the conventional wisdom on everything from the universe to the nanoparticles of the atom. She was an astute entrepreneur as chairwoman and president of the Institute for Exotic Science in Huntsville, Alabama, which she co-founded. Amy's passion for space grew from childhood in the Rocket City. After her graduation from UAH with a double major in chemistry and biology, she became an interdisciplinarian and a master of electrical engineering, chemistry, physics, and genetic engineering, as well as nanotechnology. Amy is survived by her parents, Kathy and Richard Escridge, brother Matt and Michael Escridge. Amy was preceded in death by her grandparents, Margaret and Russell Vance, Marcella and Charles Escridge. Amy lived a full life of passion and wonder for the cosmos. She was deeply loved by all that knew her. Her dear friend Sam Reed, CEO of Geometric Energy Corporation, is naming the company's next Earth orbit satellite and their Doge 1 payload headed for the moon in October for Amy. In lieu of flowers, the family asks you donate in the name of Amy Escridge to your favorite charity. The family will hold a celebration ceremony for Amy's life in Huntsville, Alabama. Now, in archival interviews, she would explicitly detail how advanced propulsion systems utilized were basically being systemically suppressed. So some of the technology that was being discovered about advanced propulsion systems, they were keeping it under wraps, and she was part of the whole situation. Listen to this.
I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. I know I've said that several times. We're the Rocket City. We're the biggest steal you've never heard of. Von Braun was here and we won the space race. We developed the Saturn V here. We built the Saturn V here. We won the space race here in Alabama, whether you've heard of it or not. And I can tell you for a fact, so many prototypes. Only prototype built like this in the world. You turn it on the first time, it works exactly like you thought it would the first time. Great data. You apply for more funding to test it more thoroughly, they cancel it. It goes to NASA divestment. It goes to the auction block. People bid on it, and literally scrap metal vendors win the bid and melt it down for scrap metal and sell it. We could be crazy far. We could be on the moons of Jupiter. We could be exploring Pluto that isn't even a planet anymore if we had spent money differently. I can tell you the names of so many NASA scientists that are depressed and they want to kill themselves because they have built prototype after prototype after prototype in Huntsville, Alabama. First in the world, never before seen, worked the first time you turned it on exactly like you thought. And it was canceled and melted down for scrap metal.
So she's saying that they develop all these advanced technologies and the powers that be basically suppress it, and then these new technologies get put up for tender and they get bought by scrap metal companies who melt it down and brush it all under the rug. And she's saying that space technologists are literally depressed and wanting to check themselves out because of how bad things are being handled over there. She would go on to say that multiple people had already achieved anti-gravity breakthroughs in the past, but all of this is just being suppressed.
I'm chewing my steak. The Hanabu saucer. So I've got the katana wielding time traveling soldier. He's Dan Cooper. Dan Cooper. You can Google him. He's on podcasts talking about how he's a time traveling, sword wielding, chess playing, whatever. He offered to mentor me in chess so that I could settle international disputes with chess. I'm not even joking. He's crazy. So he's one of my SSP contacts, allegedly. The other one, I've got this guy in Milwaukee who's German, and he says his uncle created the Hanabu saucer, and his last name is Hahn, so it's feasible. His last name is Hahn. He's at the University of Milwaukee, and he's like, yeah, my great uncle invented the Hanabu saucer. And I think that's real. But so I think Tesla had it, Eugene had it. Ken Wheeler, of course, has it. Ken Wheeler has it. I'm sorry, he does. Dan Cooper, who's the source of this info, says he also has it, independently discovered. Dan Cooper, katana wielding, time traveling, whatever. And the fifth one supposedly, according to this SSP katana wielding dude, is my dad, to independently discover anti-gravity. And this katana wielding dude, made a really big deal about, he was like, okay, listen to me. It's been independently discovered 4 other times. He said it has been suppressed every single fucking time. And he said, I don't think they're going to suppress it this time. He said, I think you're in the clear. He said, they obviously know about you because I've had multiple, both protective and threatening interactions with various agency affiliations, whatever. He was like, if you haven't had a U.S. government agent come to you and say, stop, shut the fuck up, stop, shut the fuck up. If that hasn't happened, they're going to let you do it.
It's insane, right? She's basically saying that 4 people have brought this anti-gravity technology forward. It always gets suppressed. She says that she's getting threats, and she would elaborate. She's apparently received targeted threats directly related to her scientific findings, and she's saying that, government agencies will come to you and tell you stop and shut up if you try and develop these technologies.
Their thumbs. Like, is Amy not going to publish soon? Gah, we've been influencing this bitch forever. Doesn't she know we want her to publish? Jesus. Like, there's multiple people doing that right now. And on the other side of the fence, there's multiple parties looking at each other like, didn't we tell this bitch 3 years ago that we kill people for this? Is she not listening? What is she doing? She's still doing it? What? We told her we were going to kill her 3 years ago. So I have these two different scenarios floating constantly in my life where I have people being like, do it. You're the one, do it. And then I have multiple people being like, they're going to kill you. Don't do it. They're going to kill you. I have like multiple of these whispers in my ears. I can't even describe it. It's crazy. And then I even have the people that are like, this happens too. They're like, they kill people for this, right? And then they're like, because you're a young woman, they're going to rape you before they kill you too. And I have people digging through my panty drawer, breaking into my apartment, digging through my panty drawer so that I notice. Like, I have crazy fucking threats going.
So she sounds crazy. She's saying people are approaching her saying, don't you know they kill people for this? That she's saying that people have broken into her home and dug through her belongings. Now, footage from a 2018 investor presentation actually might well have captured a first-hand look at some of the intimidation tactics that were used against Escridge years before her death. All right? This clip went around, and it was from a presentation. It says Amy Escridge's anti-gravity presentation, investor pitch or warning shot. What's really going on? And this says Amy Escridge gave a public talk on anti-gravity advanced propulsion, reportedly seeking scientists and investors. In that video, she appears nervous, hints at threats and suppression of her work. She later died in 2022 under circumstances many find suspicious, but she raises a number of questions. 1, did her technology really have merit? 2, was she being pressured or silenced? And 3, what does this mean for UAP secret tech narratives? And 4, why would the government want this not want this technology to be public? So I believe that this part is the part where she kind of touches on some of the threats against her.
With the Blacker budget.
A quote from Griffin.
A quote from Griffin.
NASA is no longer by any means a research organization.
What about the innovator who's afraid of disappearing?
That's a whole nother problem. I think doing it in the public is better in that case. But that's a different...
It still doesn't mean it will disappear. Even if you do it in the public, it still don't mean that the inventor won't disappear for lots of reasons.
They're saying even if you do this development of these technologies in public, that doesn't mean the inventor doesn't disappear. There's a lot of reasons they might disappear. Some people feel like the audience is low-key giving her a threat rather than a warning.
Like Ning Li.
They said like Ning Li.
You say to an inventor who claims as having ether in space, ether does exist and it is extremely high frequency electromagnetic wave. All that needs is to be detected and used as a source of energy.
So people are asking other sorts of questions, but basically people are saying, when was this video taken? 2019? I think it was 2018 actually, from what I heard. But people saying, my personal theory is anti-gravity is more accessible than the public realizes, but it's being suppressed because it's also a super weapon. People saying same. People always like to say this tech would ultimately lead to the death of non-renewable industries. Well, that's true, but in my opinion, the bigger reason behind the suppression is exactly this. If tech is potentially more dangerous than nukes become available to the people, the world would be toast in a day. Right? People say, wait, I want to read that comment. See that? They send tech more powerful than a nuke that can easily be made in your basement. That's the crux. It says easily. How so? Do you think it could be as simple as getting the right elements or following a recipe? Based on lots of rumors, the tech may be simple, involving motors, electromagnets, and nothing exotic. People saying, what rumors? Who's spreading them? Should we read this long comment breaking it all down? I don't want to teach you how to make a nuke by accident, but let's do it, okay? So it sounds like you basically take liquid mercury, super chill it, then it's pumped at an incredible high speed in a loop. The loop does some kind of electromagnetic effect that reduces the weight of the craft by like 90%. All of this could be completely wrong, but from what I'm read, this is the basic premise. If you want to go down the rabbit hole further, look into the TR-3B. This is how it flies, apparently. I think they call it red mercury. Lockheed has been flying these since the early 90s. They got the basic tech nailed down in the 90s, but the system requires a ton of power. That's where the element Bob Lazar was talking about. Apparently the NHI can manufacture this element. We know about it, and we know it's what powers the NHI crafts, but we can't make it ourselves yet. So anytime there's a reported crash, the military and contractors rush as fast as they can to it so they can, of course, acquire the craft, but more importantly, they want that element. That's what they're looking at for Bob's, that's what they're looking for at Bob's homes, which have been raided multiple times. Bob has the element set up like a dead man's switch, where in the event of an unexpected death, he will mail that element to some news source or scientist. It's what kind of guarantees his life. If they take out Bob, not only will they get the element 115, if I remember correctly, but he will leak everything he knows, including that element proving his story. So if you have a back-engineered craft like the TR-3B, but you don't have element 115, what can you do? This is where Lockheed's compact fusion reactor comes into play. Apparently they've cracked the code on some kind of fusion reactor that can fit inside a TR-3B. It can make enough power to run one of these crafts. That's about all I know, and that's the best I can describe any of it. I'm clearly not an engineer. And there's sources basically of these so some of these links, it's like patents, basically on Google Patents. Anti-gravity machine. The type of magnetic field this machine produces negates the effects of gravity on objects subjected to it. Since this machine is not included in US patent classifications, it would be considered a new field. So here's information about that plane, the TR-3, right? It's basically been rumored whether or not it's even real. It says the TR-3 Black Manta is a reputed speculative United States Air Force Black Project aircraft, often described as a subsonic triangular stealth reconnaissance plane. Sometimes associated with a Gulf War era spying, it's most famous in the folklore as the TR-3B, a rumored anti-gravity spacecraft allegedly developed using reverse engineered technology. That alien technology, that's what they're going to say, right? It's described as a triangular craft with angular facets, frequently reported in UFO sightings as a silent black triangle with lights on each corner. That's crazy. TR-3A versus TR-3B. The TR-3A is described as a conventional, albeit highly advanced stealth tactical reconnaissance platform. The TR-3B is the more sensational, unverified variant rumored to use a magnetic field disruptor or nuclear-powered anti-gravity drive. Origin myth. Tales often link the technology to Operation Paperclip or extraterrestrial engineering, but there's no official public evidence supporting the existence of either the TR-3A or the TR-3B. Many sightings are likely misidentified conventional aircraft, drones, or classified test platforms. But basically, yeah, there's videos about this. You know, it says they're the mysterious anti-gravity aircraft. U.S. Air Force finally revealed it, and there's Reddit threads all about it, saying the TR-3 Black Manta, reality or fiction? Do you think the tales about the TR-3 Black Manta are true? Can we use logic here to assess or find the solution? For example, let's assume there's a secret U.S. Air Force project that resulted in the U.S. Air Force having a low number of crafts which work with anti-gravitational engines and completely surpass any previous jet technology. Well, why would the U.S. have not used that in order to win Afghanistan, Libya, and Yemen rather than losing? Or would the U.S. decide not to waste such technology on rather insignificant, smaller conflicts? People are saying, I think it's all just convenient speculation that helped divert attention from real projects and possibly scared a few adversaries into even more goofy spending on projects that would never work. Goad the Russians, say, into further bankrupting themselves during the Cold War to keep up with something that never existed. Heck, it could even be used to draw out potential spy networks that might be retasked to find out more about a made-up project and potentially expose themselves. With regards to the conflicts the US partakes in these days, you assume that the wars are meant to be won flat out and end, and not just be a continuous cash crop for military contractors, suppliers, and the shareholders gorging themselves. A magical weapon that can end these wars decisively doesn't suit that corporate agenda, so even if it did exist, it's stuck somewhere not being used. People saying, well, we finally saw it in action a few months back when the US was helping Israel, as always, to intercept Iranian rockets. This comment's 2 years ago. It says, for some reason, all the videos of the incident seem to have disappeared, but there's still a couple floating around on Reddit with the Al Jazeera problems. People saying they don't have a problem with the US helping Israel. The October massacre went far beyond payback. Okay, some people are rocking with Israel. People saying they're real. Someone says they saw one. All right, but this is super creepy. All right, people saying I saw it floating in the middle of the sky. Told me I was going to have a good year. That's funny. These, if they do exist, would be high-value assets. They'd only be used as a last defense for homeland nuclear defense or to defuse the start of a war. It's actually plausible there could be a few that could be snuck under the black budget. This is probably the best way to develop these, as it'd be a small team with no possible leaks. Chinese nationals, F-35s and F-22s. These would be so dominant that those leaked plans would have been throwaway second rate. Do you think the reality? It's crazy, okay? They actually do, you know, there's videos about it. They're saying, does the US have a reverse-engineered UFO? So the idea is that they caught some alien technology and reverse-engineered what the aliens were using with their anti-gravity. That's how they want to describe it, okay? They've been delving into stories about it. Part one, they had an increase in black triangle UFO sightings. A classified black triangular aircraft was spotted. It even was seen in combat flying alongside an F-117 Nighthawk in Desert Storm. This is apparently what they're trying to hide, okay? Apparently it's like nothing they've ever seen before. It's crazy. It's actually crazy. So they're saying this is where reports of alien aircraft basically performing impossible aerial maneuvers intersect with stories about very real aircraft. There's lots of claims about the TR-3B's anti-gravity drive, most of which include using nuclear power to rotate highly pressurized mercury to produce plasma and in turn an anti-gravitational field. This is so crazy. This is actually so crazy. So they're saying that a lot of the Nazi scientists that the Americans harbored after World War II might have worked on this technology. This is so crazy. Despite how silly these claims sound, there's some evidence to substantiate elements of them. The anti-gravity drive that people believe is powering the TR-3B required massive amounts of power, but Lockheed Martin does have a patent for containerized fusion reactors they say could be small enough to fit inside the fuselage of an F-16. That's crazy. That's so crazy. All the details. So look, I could look into this a little bit more deeply, all right? But right now, I'm just trying to find out about the murders. Okay, so let's take a step back. All right, let's take a step back to Amy Etheridge. Okay, to Amy Escridge. So basically, all right, this is what it all relates to. She basically tried to expose what was going on. They said that she would go missing. All right, in this video. They said, you know, the founder of this technology will go missing. How are you not going to go missing? How are you not going to, you know, go out like, you know, the last person in your area that tried to do this, Dr. Ning Li, it gets kind of scary. So all of this is going on. She's pushing this technology, and she would unfortunately, in June 2022, be found dead under mysterious circumstances with little to no details available publicly about it. It is very, very spooky. Okay, so there's an article here on the Political Saucer that kind of gives a little bit of backstory about her death, but there's really not much out there. So this is the Institute for Exotic Science, a Family Legacy. At the heart of Amy Escridge's professional life was the Institute for Exotic Science, a public benefit corporation she co-founded and led as chairwoman, president, and CEO. But this wasn't just another tech startup. The Institute represented something far more ambitious and potentially dangerous, a systemic attempt to bring some of science's most speculative and sensitive research areas into the public domain. The Institute's focus areas read like a science fiction novel: quantum computing, gravity modification, metamaterial science, and advanced communications. These weren't merely theoretical pursuits. The stated mission was to bring gravity research into the open, a goal that would put the Institute in direct conflict with decades of government secrecy surrounding advanced propulsion technologies. What made the Institute even more intriguing was its father-daughter leadership structure. Amy's father, Richard Escridge, served as CTO and co-founder, bringing with him decades of experience as a retired NASA engineer and scientist. His background included significant work in plasma physics, pulsed plasma thrusters, and fusion propulsion systems during his tenure at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. Perhaps most significantly, Richard Escridge had been involved in NASA studies of the Pope-Osborn Angular Momentum Synthesis Theory, POAMS, a highly theoretical concept that fundamentally challenges conventional Newtonian physics and is considered by some to provide the foundation for advanced propulsion systems that could revolutionize space travel and energy generation. This wasn't amateur hour. The Escridge family brought legitimate scientific credentials and government connections to research areas that typically exist only in the shadows of classified programs. The NASA connection seeking permission for the impossible. In 2020, Amy Escridge made a statement that would prove prophetic in light of subsequent events. She announced her intention to present novel foundational work regarding anti-gravity, but explicitly noted she needed approval from NASA to do so. This single statement reveals the complex web of oversight and control surrounding advanced propulsion research. Here was a private scientist working with her own institute who felt compelled to seek government approval before sharing her research findings. The implication is clear. Her work had crossed into the territory considered sensitive by federal agencies. The fact that Escridge sought NASA approval suggests several possibilities. Either her research was genuinely groundbreaking enough to warrant government attention, it built upon classified work she had encountered through her father's NASA's connections, or she was operating under some form of security clearance or agreement that required pre-publication review. Whatever the case, the requirement for NASA approval created a fundamental tension between Escridge's stated goal of transparency and the government's apparent desire to control information about advanced propulsion technology. Parallels in Rocket City, the case of Dr. Ning Li. Amy Escridge's story cannot be understood in isolation. Huntsville has a history of producing brilliant scientists whose anti-gravity research becomes entangled with government secrecy and in some cases personal tragedy. Dr. Ning Li, a Chinese-American physicist who worked at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, became internationally known in the 90s for her theoretical work on gravity modification using superconductors. Like Escridge, Li's research attracted significant government attention. The Department of Defense provided substantial funding for her work, but as her research progressed, it became increasingly classified. The parallels between Li and Escridge are striking. Both were Huntsville-based scientists working on anti-gravity technology. Both saw their work transition from public research to government-controlled programs. Both faced attempts by foreign governments to recruit them. Chinese officials reportedly did try and recruit Li, and both became much more secretive about their work after government involvement increased. Dr. Li's son confirmed that she became notably quieter after obtaining top secret clearance, and Freedom of Information Act requests for her research was subsequently denied. The pattern suggests a systemic approach to identifying funding, then classifying breakthrough research in advanced propulsion technologies. The historical context makes Escridge's case more significant. Rather than an isolated incident, her death appears to fit in with a broader pattern of secrecy and potential suppression regarding anti-gravity research in the Huntsville area. And then, unfortunately, this is where she passed away. On Saturday, June the 11th, 2022, Amy Escridge died at her home. The official cause of death has been reported as self-deletion, but this narrative has been controversial at best, according to sources within the UAP research community. What makes Escridge's death particularly suspicious is that to many researchers is the complete absence of publicly available official documentation. Despite extensive searches, no police reports, coroner statements, or autopsy findings have been made available to the public. This lack of transparency is unusual for any death investigation, but particularly problematic given the serious allegations that have emerged. The vacuum of official information has been filled by a growing chorus of voices questioning the self-deletion narrative. Messages in Escridge's online obituaries reflect this skepticism, with condolences including statements like "Someday the truth will set us all free," Li, "Your death will not be in vain, Amy," and expressions of hope that her name will be very big when the truth about her anti-gravity research comes to light. These aren't the typical messages of grief. They're words of people who believe Amy Escridge was murdered for her scientific work. The intelligence officer's bombshell allegation. The speculation surrounding Escridge's death moved from internet forums to congressional testimony when a retired UK intelligence officer, Frank Milburn, made explosive allegations about her case. According to Milburn, Escridge was targeted with directed energy weapons and murdered by a private aerospace company because of her involvement in the UAP conversation and her work on advanced propulsion technologies. Milburn's background as a strategic and operational advisor and former intelligence officer lends weight to his claims within certain circles, though they remain unverified by independent investigations. His allegations were specific enough to be included in written testimony submitted to the U.S. House of Representatives by journalist Michael Schellenberger during UAP hearings in November of 2023. The inclusion of Escridge's case in formal congressional testimony represents a significant escalation. No longer confined to online speculation, allegations about her death are now part of the official record in congressional investigations into UAP phenomena and government secrecy. Milburn's claims about directed energy weapons deserve particular attention. These aren't conventional firearms or obvious methods of assassination. Directed energy weapons, if they exist in the forms alleged, would represent highly advanced technology that could cause death while potentially mimicking natural causes or self-deletion. The specificity of this allegation suggests either detailed knowledge of classified capabilities or an attempt to add technological credibility to murder theories. The Grusch connection, whistleblowers, and wider conspiracies. Amy Escridge's case has become intertwined with the broader UAP disclosure movement, particularly the revelations of former intelligence officer David Grusch. In July 2023, Grusch testified before Congress about alleged government programs to retrieve and reverse engineer crashed UAP technology, claiming that people had been killed to maintain secrecy around these programs. While Grusch did not specifically name Amy Escridge in his public testimony, the timing and nature of his allegations have created a framework within which her death is interpreted by UAP researchers. The suggestion that the government or private contractors have killed people to protect UAP secrets provides a potential motive for the alleged murder of a scientist working on technologies that could be related to UAP propulsion systems. The connection may be more direct than initially apparent. Though not explicitly confirmed, some researchers believe that Escridge may have been among the source who provided information to Grusch or other whistleblowers. Her stated desire to bring anti-gravity research into the open aligns with the transparency goals of the UAP disclosure movement. Whether or not Escridge was directly connected to Grusch's revelations, her case has become symbolic within the UAP community of the alleged dangers faced by those who seek to reveal advanced technologies that governments and corporations prefer to keep secret. The private aerospace connection. One of the most intriguing aspects of Milburn's allegations is his claim that a private aerospace company was responsible for Escridge's alleged murder. This detail shifts the narrative away from direct government action towards the involvement of defense contractors or other private entities with interest in advanced propulsion technologies. The privatization of sensitive research has accelerated in recent decades, with government agencies increasingly relying on private contractors to conduct classified work. This arrangement provides several advantages for those seeking to control information. Private companies are not subject to the same transparency requirements as government agencies, and their activities are protected by corporate secrecy laws, so they can operate with fewer oversight restrictions. If Escridge's research had indeed produced breakthrough results in anti-gravity or advanced propulsion technologies, multiple private aerospace companies would have compelling financial reasons to control or suppress that information. The commercial implications of working on anti-gravity technology would be transformative for the aerospace industry, potentially rendering existing propulsion systems obsolete and shifting billions of dollars in market value. The involvement of private companies also complicates any potential investigation. Unlike government agencies, which can be compelled to respond to Freedom of Information Act requests, though often with heavy redactions, private companies can invoke trade secret protections and proprietary information claims to resist disclosure of their activities. The information vacuum, official silence, and alternative narratives. Perhaps the most troubling aspect of the Amy Escridge case is not the sensational allegations of murder and cover-up, but the complete absence of transparent official investigation. The lack of publicly available police reports, coroner findings, or any detailed official account of her death creates an information vacuum that is inevitably filled by speculation and conspiracy theories. This pattern is not unique to Escridge's case. Throughout the UAP research community, similar information vacuums surround other controversial deaths and disappearances of individuals allegedly connected to advanced technology research. The consistent absence of official transparency fuels public distrust trust and legitimizes alternative narratives regardless of their verifiable accuracy. The silence is particularly problematic given the serious nature of the allegations. Claims of murder involving directed energy weapons and private aerospace company represent potential federal crimes that would normally warrant extensive investigation and public disclosure, at least of basic findings. The absence of any such disclosures raises questions about whether investigations were even conducted, whether findings were classified, or whether official channels are deliberately avoiding scrutiny of these cases. I find all of this really disturbing. I can't believe that we found another instance, 2 more instances of somebody that was working on this plasma technology. Now we're finding out that apparently they're reverse engineering crashed alien spacecrafts to create this anti-gravity technology. And there's rumored actual planes that are using this technology. So a lot of the UFO sightings might well be viewings of that TR-3B plane or similar. This is super, super concerning, okay? So look, that's it from me, all right? Let me know what you thought of this video. If I find any more interesting stories related to UFOs and their technology and people dying as a result of it, I will be sure to let you guys know, but this stuff is crazy. Hope you enjoyed that breakdown. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and I'm out.